Hello there guys, Billybo10K here, bringing you another Tuesday tier list, the show where I spill the tea on my favourite topics from gaming and other media, using a handy-dandy tier list as my guide. Now, this show happens to be called the Tuesday tier list because alliteration, but quite frankly, it's not Tuesday, and this was meant to go up on Tuesday, but it's Saturday. So, what an amazing schedule I have. I'm a professional, but we're just gonna go with it. Today, we are talking about Pokemon starters. These are the Pokemon that you choose at the start of your mainline journey games. They are the Pokemon that basically define your entire experience. If you have a good starter Pokemon, you're gonna have a good time. But if you have a bad starter Pokemon, you're gonna have a bad time, and that kinda sucks. Now, naturally, this is all going to be based on my opinion of these Pokemon, and by no means am I going to have the same list as anybody else, but if you want to try and make a list for yourself, there will be a link to the tier list maker I used down below, so you can take a look at that. And we are going to be putting them into 5 categories: D tier, C tier, B tier, A tier, and S tier. Now, at most, there can only be 6 Pokemon per tier, as per my rules, and if your favourite Pokemon is in D tier, tough luck, it's my opinion. That being said, I'm going to be rating all of the Pokemon based on 3 different factors. The first is obviously personal preference. This is probably going to dictate the majority of my positions, as quite simply, nothing beats personal experience. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the Pokemon in regards to the other starter Pokemon that existed in their region. So, for example, if I talk about Bulbasaur, I might compare him to Squirtle and Charmander because they all come from the same game. And lastly, I'm going to talk about their evolution line. I'm going to take that into consideration. Do I like all their evolutions? Do I think they're a bit weak? My basic opinions on that, so to speak. So, without further ado, let us begin. We're starting off in D tier. There are 3 Pokemon in D tier, and the first is Torchic. Now, I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this. I know there are a lot of Torchic fans out there, a lot of Blaziken fans. Not sure if there's any Combusken fans. I mean, does anyone really like Combusken? But I have never been a big fan of Torchic. The fact that they don't have any arms, so you literally can't pick stuff up. Like, if you fall over as a Torchic, how on earth do you get back up? You can't. You have no arms. You're like little Susie on the swing. She has no arms, so she falls off. Knock, knock. Who's there? It's Susie banging on the door with her head. Oh, wait, no, it's Torchic. Honestly, I just feel like Torchic is one of those Pokemon that I just never understood the popularity for. Or I feel like it was more of a case of people really fucking liked Blaziken. Like, people loved Blaziken back in the day, and nowadays I feel like Blaziken's kind of drifted away from popular Pokemon culture. But back in the day, people loved Blaziken, and I think that was why Torchic had such an inflated sort of ego, so to speak. And I was just never a fan. I personally didn't really think Blaziken was that fun, and I'm just not a fan. Next up, we have Fennekin. Fennekin breaks in Delphox line. I think everyone pretty much agrees that this one was a bit of a letdown in Generation 6. Personally, I like what they tried to do in Gen 6 when it came to, like, the final evolutions. It was sort of based on, like, traditional, like, RPG classes, and I believe Delphox was the mage. That being said, it just wasn't that interesting. It just felt kind of like furry bait, I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of hoping that Delphox would be a bit more interesting. I liked the fire psychic typing, I didn't really like the design though. I feel like Delphox could have had a more out there design, but instead she just kind of looks like a woman in a robe, sort of like a fire magic wizard 101 wizard, and it just really wasn't my cup of tea. Lastly, in the D tier, and I'm sure some people will be very annoyed with me for this, but it's Popplio. I like Popplio himself. I just really don't like his evolutions in the slightest. My issue with Popplio is that with starter Pokemon, I personally prefer them to be somewhat gender neutral. Just quite simply because you could have a guy playing the game or a girl playing the game, and they might want a guy starter Pokemon or a girl starter Pokemon. And the thing with Brionne and Primarina is that they obviously lean very heavily towards a feminine gender in terms of their looks, and trust me, I love drag queens and all that stuff, I'm a big fan of all that, but I just personally prefer gender-neutral starter Pokemon because that way I don't have to kind of get into that sort of discussion. Primarina just felt very feminine, and as someone who really likes water types, and after just coming off of Greninja, I was kind of hoping for another kind of really cool type. Instead, we get kind of a mermaid, a water fairy type, and it just wasn't for me. It didn't click with me, I wasn't interested, I wasn't intrigued, and ultimately it just meant Popplio wasn't for me, which is a real shame. We're moving on to C tier now. We have got 4 Pokemon in C tier, and the first C tier Pokemon is Chespin. Now, I have mentioned on Discord, I've mentioned in other videos, I'm not the biggest fan of Chespin's evolution line. Specifically, Quilladin is a fucking mess. No one can deny that. Quilladin is not adorable in the slightest. He's just kind of like this pudgy ball, and it just doesn't look good. Chestnut is cool. I like Chestnut's design. I've definitely come around to it, and grass fighting is way more entertaining than fire fighting, so I will give you that one. That being said, I just feel like in terms of its evolution line, I wasn't as big a fan of Chespin as I was of pretty much all the Pokemon above it. That being said, Chespin isn't a bad Pokemon. I really like the original form, the first form, the base form, and obviously Chestnut is really cool as well, if a little bit pudgy at times. It's a little bit Barra bait, but I do like me some Chespin. Next up, we have got another grass type. I think you guys are seeing a trend here. It's Chikorita. A lot of people are going to want to kill me for this one because Chikorita is like a fan favorite. The Chikorita in the anime was like everyone's favorite back in the day. Chikorita herself, though, I can't say I ever really picked her in Gold, Silver, and Crystal, because if you pick Chikorita, it's basically the game's hard mode. You get screwed over by 2 of the first 3 gyms, with Faulkner in his flying type gym, and Bugsy in his bug type gym, and then there's the ice type gym with Price as well. Like, out of all of the gyms in Generation 2 and out of all the starters, Chikorita has the most natural disadvantages when going up against a lot of the gym leaders, and that made me really less likely to pick her. On top of that, I feel like while the design is kind of adorable, it is also very basic in comparison to the other 2 starters. I will say that Meganium's final form is probably my second favorite of the Johto final forms. I think Typhlosion's probably the weakest in that regard, and Meganium is a brilliant form, but I feel like Chikorita and Bayleaf, I kind of just wanted a bit more out of them, and I just wasn't really getting it. Next up, we have got, and this one is, I 100% know, this one is going to piss off everyone. Chimchar. Don't kill me. Do not kill me, please. I mean, Chimchar was like the definitive firefighting type. It was the best firefighting type that we've had, I feel, in terms of a starter, in terms of fitting that mold. That being said, personal preference, I actually prefer the other firefighting types as opposed to Chimchar, despite the fact that I think that Chimchar and Infernape and Monferno are probably the better fight. It's weird. Basically, Chimchar I never really enjoyed because I always preferred Turtwig and Piplup, and I was really not a fan of Monferno or Chimchar's design. I liked Infernape, and I kind of liked how he was in the anime, but in the actual games, I never really found much use for Infernape. I would much rather go with Turtwig, and I never really got to grips with the character. I had friends who really liked Chimchar, and obviously a majority of the Pokemon fanbase also loves Chimchar. I just was never a big fan. He never did it for me. He just never really kind of like showed off for me, and I just wasn't a big fan, and it's just a shame. Lastly, on D tier as well, and this one's probably, look, all these positions are gonna piss people off. It's Snivy! Snivy, Servine, Serperior. I played through Pokemon Black and White probably more than any other Pokemon game aside from Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and I had playthroughs with all 3 of the starters. With Tepig, with Oshawott, with Snivy, I've had experience with all of them, and easily the Snivy experience was my least favorite of the 3. I just didn't really enjoy Serperior overall. I kind of preferred Emboar and Samurott. I feel like Oshawott and Tepig were just way more interesting. Servine and Superior just felt like, oh, I'm a snake. Now I'm a longer snake. Now I'm a really long snake. And it's just kind of like, I didn't really enjoy the evolution of the design. I just feel like Snivy could have been a lot better. I really liked Snivy in the anime, though. I'm not really a fan of Snivy outside of that, and that's a real shame. Now we're going to be moving on to B rank, and we have got 6 Pokemon in B rank, then there's 5 in A, and then 5 in S. Now you may be wondering, wait, but Billy, there's too many Pokemon there based on the amount of starters left. Well, ha ha ha, Pikachu and Eevee are on this list as well. Get Fukukut. Alright, so tier list B, and speaking of Eevee, here's Eevee at the bottom of B tier, simply because I love you, Eevee. I love you. You can turn into so many different forms, and that's great. But, like, even though Eevee can become all these different forms, how does that leave Eevee herself? Like, does anyone want an Eevee just to have an Eevee? Or do people want an Eevee to evolve the Eevee into a different type? That's my issue, because I feel like Eevee itself, like, you're not going to want to give Eevee an Everstone so it never evolves. You want to evolve that Eevee into something else, and that makes me feel really bad for the base form of Eevee. I think she's adorable. He, she, it's adorable, especially in Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. I think that's absolutely precious. That being said, in terms of being a starter Pokemon, I was always more excited to kind of, like, evolve Eevee into something else, as opposed to just kind of, you know, chilling with Eevee, and I feel like that kind of hurts the character a bit, despite the fact that there are so many good evolutions for Eevee, and I'm sure we'll do a video on that at some point as well. But yeah, sorry Eevee, gonna have to stay at the bottom of B tier. Next up, we have the second of our Unova Pokemon. We have Tepig. Tepig, his starter Pokemon formation from Pignite to Emboar, not that good. I mean, obviously I preferred it over Snivy, and if we don't include Eevee, then it literally goes Snivy, Tepig. But Tepig, I really enjoyed his anime appearance. I really enjoyed kind of playing as Tepig, playing as Emboar. Pignite, though, has a very similar issue to Quilladin in that it kind of is just like a big ball, and I'm just not a big fan of that sort of silhouette. I'm not a fan of that sort of design, and I feel like Tepig could have been a bit more fun. Also, that was the third firefighting in a row, so naturally we were all getting a bit sick of it at this point. So it is worth noting that despite the fact that I really think this was probably my favorite firefighting type, just not really a big fan. Next up, we have got Piplup. Now we're getting into some of the good ones. Piplup, Prinplup, Empoleon. I loved Piplup, I loved Empoleon. Didn't really care for Prinplup, not gonna lie. That being said, I think Piplup was probably one of my favorites when I was younger, simply because of the anime, and simply because, you know, Dawn's Piplup was fucking precious. But that being said, when I actually played the Sinnoh games, I always defaulted to Turtwig. I always thought Turtwig was the best starter. I enjoyed Piplup, but so many other people enjoyed Piplup as well that I wanted to be a bit different, and ultimately that did end up affecting my overall opinion of the Pokemon. I think Piplup is good. I would say Piplup is like the cutoff point for, like, you know, Pokemon that I'm somewhat interested in to Pokemon that I am very interested in. And from now on, we're basically just going to be getting to Pokemon that I really enjoy. So moving on, we have the final Unova starter. We've got Oshawott. Oshawott is in mid-B tier. I really liked Oshawott's first 2 forms. I loved Oshawott. I loved Duot. Samurott, when I first saw it, I was a little kind of skeptical because it was such a big change from Duot. Like, it was an insane change, and I don't think Samurott always looked right in terms of, like, the Generation 5 sprite animations. That being said, I really, really enjoyed Oshawott and Duot and Samurott. Oshawott in the anime was a lot of fun. I picked Oshawott more than I picked Tepig and Snivy when it came to Generation 5, and ultimately I just have some very good memories with this Pokemon. Next up, we have got the second of our Johto trio. We have got Totodile. Now, I originally preferred Totodile to Cyndaquil, but as of recently, I think my opinion has changed a bit, simply because I've come to appreciate Cyndaquil a lot more. That being said, Totodile was my first Pokemon. There is a place in my heart for Totodile. He was the first Pokemon I had in my first playthrough of Pokemon Crystal when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I have never looked back. This is a good boy. He will protect you. He will attack for you. He will bite. He will do all the good things. And I really liked his evolution line as well. I think Feraligatr is the best final evolution from the Johto starters, although I admittedly have been able to appreciate the form a lot more in recent memory than back in the day, because I think the sprite work for the original, like, Feraligatr and Gold, Silver, and Crystal needed a bit of work. That being said, I absolutely adore Feraligatr, and I think Totodile and Feraligatr were amazing. Croconaw was great as well. Not my favorite, but I really did enjoy this type, this Pokemon, and I just have such fond memories of Totodile that I couldn't put him any lower. The only reason he's not higher is because I have since made more memories with the rest of the Pokemon on this list, or I just prefer their designs. Last Pokemon in B tier is Litten. That means that means that it's the second best of the Alola starters. I don't know where I was going with that, to be honest, but Litten / Incineroar / God, what's the other friggin' evolution's name for Litten? Litten, Torracat, and Incineroar is here at the top of B tier, and honestly, it's mainly because of Incineroar. I really like Incineroar, like, a lot. Like, this is one of those times where it's like, normally this Pokemon should be much lower on my list, but Incineroar is just so fucking good compared to, like, Litten and Torracat, who I really don't care about. Like, unlike the other fire fighting types from previous generations, Incineroar, despite being based on a heal wrestler, was fire dark, which I thought was brilliant. I thought that was a great choice, because even though it's got that firefighting design, it doesn't have the firefighting drawbacks in terms of weaknesses, and Incineroar has been a lot of fun. I've come to appreciate his character. Of course, he's in Smash as well, and he's great fun there, and honestly, I just feel like he's freaking great. I don't care for Litten and Torracat. That being said, Incineroar is just so fucking good that he manages to get over so many of these other Pokemon, in my opinion. Now we are moving into A tier. These are my favorite Pokemon from A tier who simply just couldn't reach that top tier, but I really enjoy. And first up, we've got Turtwig. Turtwig, the final Sinnoh starter on this list. I love me a little Twiggy boy. I love me Turtwig, I love Grottle, I love Torterra. I really enjoy Turtwig's entire evolution line, and Twiggy is just freaking adorable. Why am I calling him Twiggy? Because that's what my Turtwigs were called. And I have emotional attachment to this Pokemon. Turtwig is just an adorable, chompy little boy, and I really enjoyed his evolution line. I really enjoyed playing as him in the Sinnoh games, and overall, I just feel like it was meant to be. Definitely one of my favorite grass types, and I would definitely 100% pick Turtwig again. Next up, we have the final Johto Pokemon. We have got Cyndaquil coming in low A tier. Cyndaquil is a good, precious boy. He is a nervous boy, but he is a good boy. He's freaking adorable. He can turn the fires off and on his back. He's based on adorable little rodents. I want to hug him. His evolution line is great. I do think his final evolution is a little bit weak. Typhlosion is a little bit weak in comparison to Meganium and Feraligatr. That being said, Quilava is absolutely precious, Cyndaquil is great, and I like that all three of these forms all have sort of like a common thread to them. They all look like they're from the same Pokemon, which you can't say for some of the other starters down the line. But yeah, I really like Cyndaquil. He's easily my favorite Johto starter. He's the one that I will probably pick the most now, and overall, that's what matters, really. Now, the next three Pokemon in A tier, I'm going to just say it now, it's the three Kanto starters. They round out A tier. I've got them all down here, and I'm surprised as well. I thought at least one of them would break into S tier. That being said, what order am I putting them in? At the bottom of the three Kanto starters, and I'm surprised to be saying this because I used to think this was my favorite, it's Squirtle. Squirtle is a precious turtle boy. Squirtle, Wartortle, Blastoise. An absolutely iconic trio of Pokemon and evolutions that I absolutely love. Who doesn't love a turtle with cannons in his shell that he can fire water from at will? That's amazing. And Squirtle in the anime as well was absolutely brilliant. The Squirtle Squad, his little glasses, he's absolutely precious. Anytime he gets to repop up in the anime, I get so happy every time because it kind of brings me a blast of nostalgia. And that goes for pretty much all 3 of the Kanto starters, by the way. They just hit me with all the nostalgia feels, and they remind me of a really good time when I was younger. And this isn't me, by the way, being like rose-tinted nostalgia blinded, because I never really played the Generation 1 games, not until much later in my life. And honestly, normally I'm not really much of a Gen 1er, but I can't deny that these guys are freaking amazing. Next up, Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard, which means that the final Kanto starter, which I won't name yet, is the top one. But Charmander, I like Charmander. I've come to like him. I've come to get over the fact that, yes, he's a little bit overrated. I think a lot of people really just like him because, oh my god, he's a dragon! But there have been so many better dragons in the games since then, and it's just like, look, y'all want to be nostalgia blinded for Charmander? That's cool, but as a Pokemon fan, I can completely respect Charmander. I really enjoy the Pokemon. I think he's got really cool, just solid designs. Charizard in the anime, of course, has had one of the best arcs out of Ash's Pokemon, and I really enjoy just kind of the whole design. On top of that, I have actually enjoyed Charmander due to a lot of outside Pokemon media. There is a fan fiction called Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Silver Resistance that's about, like, I think it's what, like 700,000 words long at this point, and the main 2 characters are a Charmander and a Bulbasaur, and I definitely really kind of got an appreciation for the species through that, and through the Mystery Dungeon games in general, because I also used Charmander during one of my playthroughs, and as y'all know, if I use a Pokemon in Mystery Dungeon, I'm probably gonna get attached to it, as the S tier is probably gonna show. But yeah, I really like Charmander. I think he's cool. I don't think anyone's gonna disagree with that, except for the people who think he should be an S tier. And lastly, rounding out the Kanto starters and A tier is Bulbasaur. I fucking love me some Bulbasaur. He's my favorite grass type outside of the one in S tier. He's like my second favorite grass type. He's my favorite from Kanto, and he's one of my favorite grass type Pokemon in general. He's an absolutely precious boy, even if they can't always seem to get the coloration right. And sometimes they get it very wrong. But Bulbasaur specifically, I mainly like Bulbasaur for his first evolution. I'm not the biggest fan of Ivysaur or Venusaur, but Bulbasaur himself is just, for me, like, one of my favorite Pokemon designs ever. And on top of that, he is a precious boy. He is probably one of my favorite Pokemon from the anime, definitely like top 5, top 3 in terms of Ash's Pokemon. And he also has one of those arcs that is just really fun to watch. He's kind of like this peacemaker, and it's really cool, and I just really like Bulbasaur, and why am I trying to justify this? This is personal experience. I just really like Bulbasaur more than the other 2 Kanto starters, and I really like all the Kanto starters, so that's why Bulbasaur is in A tier. And now, the final 5, the top 5 starters, in my opinion, in S tier. We're starting with Pikachu. Of course, we couldn't put Pikachu anywhere but S tier. Quite frankly, Pikachu is the mascot of the damn franchise, and that means if he doesn't get an S tier, something is very, very wrong. Pikachu appeals to all audiences, to all people, and even if I didn't like Pikachu personally, I'd still put him in S tier because he's earned that right. He has come through for everyone in the Pokemon universe, and for everyone just everywhere. He is just the most iconic Pokemon, and I don't really need to justify why Pikachu is so goddamn amazing, but if we really need to justify it, just look at Ash's Pikachu in the anime. Fucking baller, baller, baller. Let's move on to the final 4. Now, as you may be aware, there are no more fire types. There are 2 grass types and 2 water types, and the first and 4th place Pokemon, on this list is Rowlet. I love me some Rowlet. And I'm gonna say this, I haven't played Generation 7, I'm not gonna lie, but Rowlet, Dartrix, and Decidueye, fucking love them. Their designs are phenomenal. I love Rowlet's little owl design, he is precious. Dartrix gives me like this weird sort of like butler slash Gundam Tanaka during Danganronpa 3 Despair arc. And then Decidueye is arguably one of the coolest designs we have ever had for a Pokemon. On top of that, we go from Grass Flying to Grass Ghost. A Grass Ghost typing is just insane. I love it. I think it's a brilliant choice. I think it is just unique and interesting and fun, and Decidueye is like this archer as well. I'm a really big fan of rangers and archers and like fantasy epics and stuff. Like I'm a big fan of Legolas, for example. So Decidueye just really ticks all of my boxes. I absolutely adore him, and he definitely deserves to be in the top 4. Now for the final 3. In 3rd place, just missing out on the top 2 spots, we have got Froakie, Frogadier, and, of course, Greninja. I don't think I need to explain why Greninja and the Froakie line is so good. I mean, the fact that Greninja is in Smash is already a good indication that the character and the line of Pokemon is loved by many people, but easily for me, Greninja was the best of the Kalos starters. He had the sleekest design, he had the most interesting design, and can we please just talk about anime Greninja? Like Ash Greninja, all that bullshit. Easily one of the best Pokemon that Ash has ever had. Still pissed off that he got released. But without a doubt, one of my favorite sort of just arcs in the anime. Greninja as a Pokemon is really fun to use. I really enjoyed using him in my playthrough of X and Y. And overall, just completely deserving of being in the top 3. The only reason Greninja doesn't crack the top 2 is because the top 2 hold a very special place in my heart. And let's discuss them. And I'm going to discuss them together because the top 2 Pokemon are tied at the top spot as my favorite Pokemon of all time. Not just starter Pokemon, my favorite Pokemon of all time. And those 2 Pokemon are, of course, Mudkip and Treecko, my 2 favorites of all time. I've said that 5 times now. I fucking love these 2 boys. Mudkip is, and was for a very long time, my favorite Pokemon. Now Treecko is tied with it, because I love them both equally, and they're both precious. But the reason why I like Mudkip and Treecko isn't because, oh, I played Generation 3 and I really enjoyed them. No. Ironically, the reason why they're my favorite Pokemon is Mystery Dungeon. Who would have fucking guessed? My Mudkip and my Treecko, Ewan and Ozzy, are my favorite characters I have ever had the pleasure of playing as in a game. And in the Mystery Dungeon series, one of the games that really brought me back into Pokemon after a bit of a hiatus when I was younger, these 2 characters basically sucked me in, and I've never let go of them since. Mudkip is literally my avatar online, and Treecko has always been sort of like the companion to Mudkip that I've always liked to kind of have around. Like wherever my Mudkip goes, my Treecko will follow. And they basically are inseparable at this point, to the point where I simply cannot rate them unless I'm rating them equally. Mudkip and Treecko as well have some brilliant evolution lines. Can we please just talk about those? Specifically with Mudkip, you get Marsh Stomp, which is a nice sort of like evolutionary form before Swampert, which Water Ground, yes, please. I love that combination. And then Mega Swampert is just a beefy boy who I just want to hug. He is brilliant, and I love him so much. Meanwhile, Treecko gets one of the coolest designs in Grovyle, who is one of the few second stage Pokemon that I really enjoy. Like, Grovyle as well, also slight bit of bias, because Mystery Dungeon, Grovyle had a big role in that, and you know, it is what it is. And then Sceptile was also just absolutely awesome as well. Mega Sceptile, just, oh, beautiful. Like, there is no way for me to distinguish between these 2 characters which one I like more, because I like them both so damn much. And without a doubt, Mudkip and Treecko are my favorite Pokemon of all time. So thank you everyone for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that bell for notifications about all my new uploads, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.